The NFL, like any competitive sport, is, well, competitive. As competition heats up, tempers can flare. So much so that anger and frustration can boil over into outbursts when talking to the media. In today's video, we're going to look into 5 instances where NFL players could not control their temper. Let's go ahead and begin at number 5, and that takes us to a head coach named Dennis Green. After a controversial exit from Minnesota in 2001, Green would get his second opportunity with the lowly Arizona Cardinals in 2004. After a so-and-so first 2 seasons, there were big expectations for year 3. You had Fitzgerald, Anquan Boldin, and now with your quarterback of the future in Matt Leinart, making a run to the playoffs was not out of the question. But it is the Arizona Cardinals, more so the Arizona Cardinals of the mid-2000s. Needless to say that they fell well below expectations. After winning their first game, the Cardinals would go on to lose their next 8 straight. None of the losses hurt more, however, than the Week 6 game against the Bears. Midway through the third quarter, the Cards were actually up 23-3 and looked to have this game wrapped up. But Rex Grossman, actually scratch that, it wasn't Rex Grossman, Devin Hester, the now Hall of Famer, and the Bears defense would rally and score 3 straight non-offensive touchdowns to win the game. Let me repeat that for you guys. 3 straight non-offensive touchdowns. After the game, Coach Green was fuming to where he let out his infamous rant that people still recognize today.
The Bears are who we thought they were, but they are who we thought they were, and we let them off the hook.
The Cardinals would finish 5-11 and Green would be canned the following season. Following his departure, Green would coach for a few teams in the UFL, that's the United Football League, but ultimately retired in 2011. On July 21st, 2016, Green would die from a cardiac arrest, where he is survived by his 4 children. Despite the outburst he's known for, he was at least able to make the most out of it and turn it into a commercial. So you know what, even with his angry outbursts, he made something out of a pretty negative time during his coaching career. So, you know, end on a positive note there.
Who knows what that's called? That's the draft, okay?
Our next angry outburst features another head coach in the NFL, that being Jim Mora Sr. While he wasn't as abrasive as Dennis Green, he would get his point across in a more unique way, to say the least.
We couldn't do diddly poo, we sucked.
However, Jim Mora's most known outburst comes from his time with the Indianapolis Colts. In 2001, Peyton Manning hadn't quite reached that superstar level. Still, the Colts were able to scrape together a 4-3 record through 7 games. However, Indy would go on to lose their next 5, and right in the middle of those losses came one against the 49ers. In a game where the Colts were blown out 21-40, Mora was then asked what the 4-6 team's chances were to make the playoffs, to which we now get our infamous soundbite known as, or dubbed simply as, playoffs?
Playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs?
Jim's skepticism proved to be correct, as the Colts finished the season 6-10, and Mora would end his head coaching career in the NFL. Following his run at head coach, Mora took the opportunity to be an on-air analyst in 2003, but has since, for the most part, stayed out of the spotlight, which is understandable given that the man is now 89 years old. No matter what happens though, Mora will still always be remembered for one of the funniest, yet angriest outbursts in NFL history. We now move on to our first player on the list, and that being Derek Anderson.
Mr. Anderson, Mr. Anderson.
Oh, Mr. Anderson.
Anderson came into the league as a 6th round pick to the Baltimore Ravens in 2005, but was not expected to be anything other than a backup in the NFL. Things took an interesting turn a year later when the Browns gave him a shot in 2007. In a quarterback battle between himself, Charlie Fry, and rookie Brady Quinn, it was Anderson who would become the starter by week 2 against the Bengals. They did lose 51-45, but this was not because of Derek Anderson. He would go on to throw 5 touchdowns in this game to solidify remaining the starter for the rest of the season. This magical run would result in the Browns going 10-6, their first 10-win season since 1994, and their only one up until 2020. 20. Anderson, unfortunately, would never be able to replicate this 2007 season. By 2008, he was being benched in favor of the fan favorite Brady Quinn on and off, and this carried over into the 2009 season, where Anderson had his worst numbers yet. Looking for a fresh start, Anderson would join the Arizona Cardinals in 2010, but despite the fresh start, Anderson would continue to struggle. Frustration would boil over after a game against the 49ers, where Anderson could be seen laughing on the bench despite being in the middle of a blowout. When confronted about this moment, Anderson just lost it.
The camera showed you.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I'm not laughing about it. You think this is funny? I take this serious. I'm just telling you right now what I do every single week.
Anderson and the Cardinals would finish 5-11, with Anderson himself going 2-7. From there, he would bounce around from a few different teams, but was a backup for the most part until his retirement in 2018. Despite only spending one season in the desert, Anderson still holds strong feelings about it, calling the organization the most dysfunctional he had ever been a part of. And that's saying something considering you played for Cleveland. Ooh day. Woo! I always gotta say that at least once, right? Still, no one could take back the season for Derek Anderson. He was at the very least a one-year wonder in the NFL. We now move on to one of the more recent outbursts on this list, but I'll be honest with y'all, I'm kind of cheating with this one because the guy featured didn't necessarily have an outburst, but I feel like 99% of anyone else who was being interviewed would have. Let me explain. After spending his first 7 seasons with the Bengals, Giovanni Bernard opted to join the Bucs in 2021 in hopes of winning a Super Bowl ring alongside Tom Brady. In the 2022 season, Bernard would suit up for a game against his former team in the Bengals, and it's during this game that it appeared that Bernard missed a call for a fake punt. While this wasn't the reason specifically why the Bucs lost the game, it was enough for some ESPN reporters to continuously haggle and nag and harass Gio in the locker room.
Well, you were injured all year.
What have you done for us to talk to you about all year? I talked to you Tuesday. Don't say you're not talking because I didn't talk to you all year.
You were also injured most of the season, too.
Can I go to my family that I have outside? And
You
all
can.
of a sudden now?
Bernard was not in a talking mood, but the reporters would not relent. While Bernard made the claim that they haven't wanted to talk to him all year, the reporters would rebuttal and say things like, "What have you done to make us talk to you all year?" And "You were injured all year." This is why I say most people would have reacted or would have retaliated with an outburst, but Gio actually kept his composure and was professional throughout the entire process. He didn't have an outburst, he even stayed back and answered their questions. So while Bernard didn't have the outburst per se, he did cement himself into a meme, thus immortalizing him forever. It also goes to show you how far reporters are willing to go to get a statement out of a player. And it could be what happened to the last guy we talk about on our list. So now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to talk about one of the most well-known outbursts in sports history. Even though this incident happened all the way back in 1998, it is still talked about as one of the low points of an already very low career. And the person of interest that we're talking about today is the one and only Ryan Leaf. To which, on a side note, he does need his own How Bad in my How Bad series, so, be on the lookout for that. Back in 1998, it was a genuine question if he or Peyton Manning would go number 1. The Colts ultimately decided to go with the future 5-time MVP, so Leaf would land to the San Diego Chargers with the 2nd overall pick. One of the main reasons Indy didn't choose Leaf was a clear lack of discipline, and that was immediately made known to the Chargers as soon as they drafted him. Fast forwarding to the regular season, things did actually start off okay with a 2-0 record, but the season quickly fell off the rails. Leaf and the Chargers would lose 11 of their last 14 games to finish 5-11. This disastrous rookie year also included one of the most well-known outbursts of all time. When Jay Posner, a journalist for the San Diego Tribune, tried to conduct an interview with the man, he was met with hostility.
Don't talk to me, all right? Knock it off!
Leaf had to be escorted by Junior Seau and would issue an apology for the outburst, which he quickly crumpled up and threw in the back of his locker. Leaf would ultimately be out of the league by the 2001 season, throwing 14 touchdowns to 36 interceptions and a completion percentage of just 48.8% to top off a woeful 4-17 record. Leaf never grew out of this immaturity and paid for it by being labeled the greatest bust in NFL history. Leaf sadly did not get his life together until pretty recently. Leaf was also incarcerated for burglary, theft, and drug charges, and would ultimately be sentenced to 7 years in prison in 2012. This story does take many turns, but long story short, Leaf was out of prison by 2014 on probation. But this wouldn't be the end of Leaf's legal troubles, as in 2020, he was arrested on domestic battery charges that resulted in 3 more years of probation. Despite the valleys that plagued his life, he seems to be doing better now, even being a college football analyst and a broadcaster at ESPN. Leaf frequently speaks to prisoners at Montana State Prison to give his testimony on how you can turn your life around. So there you guys have it. Those are 5 instances, or 4.5 instances, of the angriest outbursts in NFL history. Let me know if I missed one in the comments down below. Be sure to thumbs up this video and subscribe if you haven't done so already. I am proud to say we are now on the road to 3,000 subscribers. Thank you guys once again for your support, and until next time, shaboy!